Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the How Did You Learn to Do That podcast. Thank you so much for all the love and support you've given us over the last couple of months. And we would love if you could share our podcast on Instagram, as well as subscribe on YouTube and follow along on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to hear about all of our new episodes and all the content that we have. If you haven't already, I would love for you to join our newsletters list to hear more about the content that we have to share and to get your free journaling guide. And with that, remember that the challenge is still on this week, the Connect Deeper with Yourself challenge. And we've just completed challenge 1, and challenge 2 just started yesterday. And we're going to be doing challenge 3 and wrapping up next week. So I hope that you can take some time to go through this, and it's not too late, so you can still get access to the live and all the information, and you can still connect with me. And I'd love and join our Facebook group. And get some guidance from me. So I would love to have you join us. So let me know how it's going. Send me a note and write in our Facebook group. And so today I just wanted to take some time because this is something that I wanted to share with this community because you've been so supportive and so encouraging to me and loving to all the guests that have come on our show that have talked about what really catalyzed them to change their life and move forward. And I wanted to actually take a minute to tell you guys something very personal about myself. I actually intended to do this episode a couple of weeks ago, but I got nervous and I didn't really want to share this information at that time. I didn't know how to share it. I didn't know if it was going to be taken very well, or if I was doing enough justice to what I'm going to share with you. But I decided that, you know what, with this challenge, connecting deeper with yourself, it's imperative that I really connect deeper with you and share and be vulnerable and let you know about my life and something that's very, very personal to me, and how I've been able to overcome that and help myself move forward. So I know a couple weeks ago I did the episode about 15 books that have changed my life. And one of those books was Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant's book, Option B. And in that book, they both talk about when option A is no longer available, it's no longer an option. How do you learn to kick the shit out of option B? And that's what this life that I have right now, this is me kicking the shit out of option B. This is me taking this time and this energy and giving myself 100% commitment to make sure that I create the best option B that I can for myself and for my family. And so, what was my option A and what didn't work out for me? So, in 2015, my husband and I got married in August of 2015. And shortly after our wedding, I would say about the week after our wedding, we ended up actually conceiving a child. And at that time, I had just finished my master's. I had been in school consecutively for about 6 years, and I was married, and we were living in downtown Vancouver. And I was just excited for this new chapter to have more freedom with my time and be able to do more things and not just have to sit and study all day, because I have a master's in public health, and going straight from my bachelor's of science to my master's was a lot of work for me. And then while doing my master's, I was also working full-time and planning for a wedding, so it was a lot on my plate at the time. And I was excited for that new chapter. But when I found out I was pregnant in September, I was a little bit overwhelmed because I felt like, oh my goodness, like how am I going to be able to have this time to be free and enjoy my life after all this effort and time that I put into school. And now I'm going to be a mom and have a baby, and that's going to take up time too. And so I was very nervous, to say the least. And I just didn't know if I was ready because I was 26 years old at the time, and I thought it was just too soon. But nevertheless, my husband and I, decided that we were so excited for this, and we were going to make the best that we can out of it. And that, you know what, we will have time in our life to be free and to enjoy and to live and all of that. And so we were so excited. So that fall, we actually had planned to go on a long honeymoon, but then because I was pregnant, we said, let's just delay that. Let's just get a house and kind of get our life together, and create a life and a home before our baby arrives. So we purchased a home closer to our parents, not in downtown Vancouver, but closer to our parents. And then it was a brand new build, so we said, okay, we'll wait until the baby's born and then we'll move in. And actually, the day we took possession would have been the day that our son would have been born. And so yeah, so then I continued to work and everything was going really well. And I had everything was going really well. And I was at work and I was about halfway through. It was 20 weeks in a day. And actually, I was 20 weeks at this point. And then I had, I'm not going to share all the details of what happened and how it happened because it's very personal to me. And it's also not just my story, it's also my husband's as well. So a lot of that I'm not going to share, but I'll share the gist of kind of what happened. But I was sitting at work and it was a pretty slow day and I, had this kind of feeling something wasn't right. And I went to the washroom and I thought something doesn't feel right here. I need to go to the hospital. And I just had this like urge that I need to go to the hospital. And the hospital was just across the street from me. So I called my husband and I said, after work, I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to go to the ER and I'm going to get checked out because I'm a little bit nervous. And I just have this feeling I need to go. And I kept doubting myself because I kept thinking to myself that I don't want to be that first time pregnant person that feels like they need to constantly go to the hospital for any little thing. And then I was kind of having doubts of whether I should go or should not. And I told my husband, he said, you know what? Well, why don't we go home? We'll have dinner. We'll call the midwives and maybe they can give us some direction. And then we can always go back to the hospital at any time. But at least we've had dinner and you've relaxed a bit. I said, okay. So got home, we had dinner, I called the midwives. They weren't answering for a very long time because the hotline that we call, it's for the midwife that's on shift. But if she's in the middle of a birth, obviously she doesn't answer. So it had been a couple of hours and then finally she called me back and I told her and she, reassured me that I think she thought everything was fine and there's nothing to worry about. But I still felt like I needed to go to the hospital. So then I said to my husband, let's just go. So we went to the hospital and we were sitting there and it was late. I was tired. He was tired. We both had work the next day. And then the nurse that was in the ER came out and, I guess she was having a rough day. And she just said, you know what? If you're not here for an emergency, then go home and don't hold up the lines because we're super busy tonight and you're not getting in for at least a few hours. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, I'm one of these people she's talking about. So I should just go home. So I told my husband, I was like, you know what, let's just go. I think I'm fine. And her midwife said I'd be fine. So let's just go home. We went home. We went to bed. And then middle of the night, I woke up and things were not okay. I had, things were not okay because I had been bleeding a lot in our bed while I was sleeping. So I said to myself, okay, let's go. We got to go. So we went back to the emergency around 5 in the morning. 4:35 in the morning and again the same nurse was there and she it wasn't too pleasant to me because I had left earlier and I had said it's not an emergency, so I left. So she wasn't sure why I was back, and I feel like that mindset of hers was really, I don't think it would have changed the outcome of what would happen to me, but it definitely played a factor in how I felt and had any chance of feeling better. So we were there and then I just kept telling, I just had severe pains. And now that I look back on it, I realized I was in full labor. And then finally around 7 when there was shift change, I had a new nurse come in and I had a new doctor. They came check me out and the doctor checked the heartbeat and said everything looked fine. I wasn't sure and she was going to send me for some ultrasounds and some testing. But before she could do that, I felt like something was really wrong and I was in a lot of pain. And so what happened was I ended up actually pushing our son out after my water had broken. And I didn't know what was going on because I didn't know about the water breaking and why I had the sudden urge to push, any of that. I didn't know. So yeah, I knew that something was wrong, and I knew that I had pushed my son out because I saw that that's what happened. And immediately after that, we were whisked away to the trauma unit, and everybody then was all over me trying to figure out what to do and what not to do. And the hospital we had been in doesn't specialize in pregnancies. There's one actually just a 5-minute drive away that does. And so they were pulling, experts from that hospital to ask what they should do. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, like, I don't know what's going on right now, but all I know is I'm no longer pregnant, and I don't know if my son has survived because he was only 20 weeks and a day. And I remember looking at my husband and just asking him if he was okay, because a lot of this I didn't want to, when things like this happen to me, when bad things happen, I need to be alone. I need to do it alone. I don't want to share. So, when I gave birth to my son, I was actually alone. Um, and I hadn't really shared the details of what happened with my husband, but he was there with me the whole time. I just didn't allow him to come into the room where it had happened, because I was just worried about, more so whether he could handle it. And he could handle anything, but I was nervous about it. I just needed to do it on my own. And then we were whisked away into a room, for recovery, and I knew I had to have surgery that night, to D&C. And so we were in this room, and I was waiting for the D&C, and then a social worker came in actually and asked my husband and I if we wanted to meet our son, and he did not survive. And his name is Elijah. He did not survive. He was too young. It was not possible for him to be put into an incubator or anything like that. It just wasn't developed enough yet. So it wasn't a place where he could have survived at all, or there's anything that they could have done. So my instinct was no, I can't, because I was scared. I was scared to meet him because I said, if I meet him, it just makes it so much more real of what's happened and what we've lost, and that he's not in our life. And that it would make it so real that he is real and he's not in our lives anymore, and that we've just lost our son. And that wasn't even something that I had ever thought about and as a possibility for me. And then I said to myself, I said no to the social worker right away, but my husband instantly said, yes, I want to meet him. And I looked over at him and I said, are you sure? And he said, if you're not okay with it, if you're not comfortable, I won't ask you to do that, but I do. I want to hold him, and I want to spend time with him. And this is the only day we get to spend time with our son. And I want to do that. And I said to him, okay, fine, I'll do it too. Because I was scared, but I could see that how much he really wanted this. And I didn't want him to be alone in that experience. And I wanted to be there with him as well. And I also wanted to meet him. I just needed to get over my fear. And then the social worker brought him in. They had cleaned him up. They had him in a blanket and a little toque, just like they would if you had a healthy delivery. And instantly I had all the nurses that were from the trauma unit come up to the room, and and the social worker and the doctor and the other nurse, and they just kind of lined the room, and it was a big room, and they handed our son to me, and I just sobbed and I just cried, because in that moment I realized my life had changed. Everything that I had ever believed in changed, because option A was no longer available for me, and I was never going to be the same person that I was before. The things that used to matter to me don't matter to me anymore. The trivial things don't matter anymore. The little things in life don't matter anymore. To me, it was just, this happened. And the grief was so big. And I had lost great grandparents prior to this, which was the closest family member that I've ever lost. But it was not very frequent in my life to lose someone extremely close to me. And so it was a level of grief I've never experienced before. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, how am I ever going to get through this? How am I ever going to manage? How, like, I just don't know. Like, am I gonna even, are we gonna survive? Is our marriage going to survive? Are we even going to, am I even going to ever be able to forgive myself or anybody for this, or the world? Or am I going to become jaded and angry at everything in the world? Or am I going to, how am I going to move forward? You know? And on top of that, our families had known, and I was like, how am I going to tell them? Are they going to judge me for losing a child? As women often get judged, you know, when they lose a child, they are blamed and judged. And I just thought about that, and I thought about, do I want to go back to work? I don't want the sympathies from people. I don't want them to look at me like, oh, that's the girl that lost her son. So I had all these feelings going through my mind. But I remember that day, December 16th, 2015, very clearly. I remember the social worker who I, have to say that before that social worker, I knew what they were, and I knew how amazing the profession was and the work that they did. But until I experienced it personally, I didn't realize how truly amazing it truly, truly was. And so the social worker brought us this kit that was created by volunteers out of the women's hospital. And in this kit was in two knitted toques. It was a knitted sleep sack. It was actually two knitted sleep sacks. It was a little clay mold that you could mold the foot and or a hand in there. There was handprints, footprints. There was a little card. There was just a box of stuff that we could do. There were some blankets in there. There was just some stuff, and she really kind of took time to allow us to grieve, allow us to spend time with our son. And then she came in and she said, you know what, this is your only day you get to be a parent to this child, so let's do some things that you would have done if this child was alive, and you would have done it many times. And she said, let's change his clothes. Let's swaddle him in a blanket. I'm going to teach you guys how to do that, and let's put him in the sleep sack, and mom, you do it, and then dad gets a turn, and then you guys put the little toque on, take some pictures. And in that moment, my husband and I kind of looked at each other like, what? Like, why would we want to do this? This is ridiculous. Like, why? And then she said to us, she said, take this opportunity. This is the only time you get to change this child of yours clothing. This is the only time you get to put a toque on his head. This is the only time you get to swaddle him. This is the only time you get to take pictures of him. And when you have a child, or when you have family or friends, you don't take pictures or change your clothes thinking this is the only time I'm going to do this. This is the first and last time I'll ever be able to do this. And there's so many times in our life where we just do stuff and we never think this is the first and last time you'll ever do this, right? And so that moment was just like, I just couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that this is the first day that I'll ever meet my son. This is also the last day I'll ever physically see him. And I said, okay, let's do this. So he was so little, and so I was just really nervous, but she eased my nervousness and showed me how to do it. And so I got an opportunity to do that, and my husband did too. And then we took pictures. We took a lot of pictures, which I'm so grateful for, because I do go back to those pictures throughout my life since that time. And I just remember the emotions that I felt in that moment, and the person that I was in that moment, and the person that I am today. And they're two different people. That was the moment my life changed. And I think I said in a couple episodes that my daughter was the catalyst for why I decided to figure out what the purpose of my life is. And she is. But my son was the reason why I got to a place where I really wanted to figure out my purpose in life and live very intentionally, because losing him had me hit rock bottom. It was a time that I can't When I think about it now, I don't even know how I survived, but there was the strength that he gave us to allow us to survive. And in the last years, since my daughter's been born, there's been a lot more feelings coming up about around him for my husband and I. And I've spent a lot of time feeling those feelings instead of running away from them, because I'll go into kind of how my daughter really, I had conflicting feelings about when my daughter was born and the things that she's been through. And even today, when I see her walking, talking, playing, it's different for me than it is for a lot of parents who may not have experienced loss before they had their child. And I just remember that moment being a really awful day. That moment when I had to say the last goodbye to my son was, I've never cried like that in my whole entire life. I've never felt the agony. I've never felt my heart literally be pulled away from me before. And that was the moment where I just knew that that was it, that I was never going to see him again. And it was hard. It was so hard. It was really hard. Just thinking about that emotion. Actually, I haven't gone back there in a very long time, so that's why I'm tearing up. But I remember that moment so clearly. And I remember that moment because I was like, how am I going to move forward? How am I going to do this in life? And I remember the moment we had to actually leave, and I had to get dressed. I had to leave the hospital. And I remember feeling weird because I had to put on the clothes that I came into the hospital with, and the clothes that I had come into the hospital with, I was pregnant. I had a belly, And as I was leaving and I put on the pants, it was loose on me. And I was like, whoa, why are these pants loose? And then I had to realize that it's because I'm no longer pregnant. I no longer have my son in me. And I had to leave the hospital. Even walking out of the hospital, even though the nurses and staff and everyone were, asking if I was okay and what's up, I felt the pressure and the guilt of, oh gosh, they're looking at me like that's the girl that lost the baby. That's the one that lost her son, and now she's just walking out. And I just felt like, get me out of here, get me home. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to do anything, and I don't want to be judged. And we went home. And I remember when I went home, I just wanted to lay in my bed, and we had tons of family and friends coming over to visit us and to see if we're okay and spending time with us, taking care of us, bringing us food and gifts and chocolate and everything. And I just remember it was a couple of days where we had people over all the time, and then it was a Saturday. The Saturday was the third day, I believe, or third or fourth day, I don't remember. But I remember looking at my husband that morning and saying, I'm locking the door and nobody's allowed to come here. I don't want anybody here because I want to be alone. I just want to sit. I don't want to be strong. I don't want to hear comments. I don't want to explain how I'm feeling. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to be alone to grieve. And I spent the whole day crying and, crying a lot and in agony. And I remember I needed that day because after that day, I felt like I had gotten it all out as much as I could, and I could maybe take a step forward, and I could maybe take a minute to move forward because I had finally thought about it. I've had time for myself to not feel guilty, not feel judged, just be with myself and be with my body and do what my body is telling me to do. And yeah, it was a day that I really, really needed to do that. And prior to that, I know when somebody's grieving, everybody grieves differently. And I remember that moment, I had people around me that were crying harder than me, looking sadder than me. You know, they weren't sadder than me. They weren't crying harder than me. I was crying and I was sad on my inside. But when people are around, I try to be strong. So for me, I felt angry at those people because I felt angry because how dare you be acting sad and upset here? And I'm the one consoling you. Like, how dare you? And I was so mad. I was so mad because I said, I lost my child, and you're sitting here crying. And I was so mad about it because I just said, that's not fair. That's not fair that you sit here and you're going to cry. And so mad at my family and my friends. And I just said, that's not okay. That's not okay. And that day that I said I wanted to be alone was, I needed that. I needed that for myself and my body. So following that, because in Canada, we have a great system, social system. So because I had been more than halfway through my pregnancy, I qualified for maternity leave. So I took it. I took 4 months off work because I needed it. I needed that time to heal. I needed that time to just think about how to move forward. I needed that time for everything. And then my husband came and he said, you know what? Why don't we take that honeymoon? Let's go for a few months. Let's go to Southeast Asia like we had planned to go, and let's just do it. And I said, okay, I have the time off. Let's do it. I need this time. So we did that. We spent 2 months going all around Southeast Asia. And for me, it was a healing trip. It was healing because I got to slow down in life. I got to enjoy the simplicities of life. You know, when you're in that region of the world, you look at how people just manage with what they have. And sometimes the smallest of things that they have, but they love it and they enjoy it. And I just thought to myself, yeah, I need to enjoy every minute of this. I need to be intentional with my days, intentional with my time, intentional with the people in my life, because it's only a certain period of time that's available. And I just remember not feeling as angry anymore, feeling relaxed, feeling at peace, feeling that life is so precious and I need to make every minute of it. And I remember coming back from that trip and I had transformed into a totally different person because I had realized that I'm not going to let another minute slip by without being intentional about it, without creating the life that I want to for myself. But because I was at rock bottom, I needed to pick myself back up and I needed to move forward and I needed to figure out how I was going to do that. That's the piece I didn't know about. And so when I returned back, I went straight back to work. And I remember thinking to myself that I did not like that job. I decided that I wasn't going to do things that I didn't like anymore because my time in my life was too precious. And I decided that I'm going to spend my time creating a life that I wish existed for myself. And so I thought about my life and I thought about my son, Elijah, and I thought about what I needed to do. And I realized that what I needed to do was I needed to figure out why what happened to me happened. Why wasn't I sent to the hospital that specializes in pregnancies if it was just a 5-minute drive? Why did I get not the best care? You know, maybe it would have reversed things for me, but I don't know if they would have. But even if it didn't, at least I would have been more comfortable, more aware, more knowledgeable. I had more knowledgeable people taking care of me. And so I said, I'm going to figure that out and I'm going to make that change. And so I took the role in risk management where we look at this kind of work all the time. And, you know, when critical events happen, which mine was, doing the report around it, looking at it and understanding why. And I said to myself, okay, I'm going to do it. And when I did do that, when I when I did do that, when I did look into it, I decided that I wanted to develop a policy to have people transferred, or at least I wanted to let people know what happened to me so they could develop the policy. So I spent the next year and a half where I just really focused on how do we proactively manage risks in the health system provincially so that people didn't have to experience a loss like I had lost. And I got to a place where I finally understood why what happened to me happened, why I wasn't transferred, and what needed to happen in order to have that transfer. And I didn't get to see that policy through, but I did share enough with the world around me and the people around me that those changes may occur, but at least I figured out the why and the how and the what. That was what was most important to me. So after I did that, I realized that I had set forth to accomplish something for myself and to understand something, and I did it. And I was so proud of myself, and I was so happy that I finally figured this out, and that maybe a policy could be created and somebody else didn't have to go through what I had to go through. And shortly after that, I decided I wanted to conceive another child, and it had taken me 3 years from that time to conceive my daughter, and I knew that I was just nervous. I was nervous about it because I didn't know how to feel about it. I didn't want to try for something and be excited for it and have it not come to fruition for me on earth, not have a child earth side. And I remember I used to think to myself that could I just never have children? Because do I really want to put myself through that again? And I thought to myself, no, I want children. I love children. Anyone that knows me knows I've always wanted many, many kids in my life. And I thought that, you know what? No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to have another child. And when I decided that, and I will say something else actually, that Elijah has blessed us in our lives in many different ways, many different times. He blessed me in having this transformational journey, getting me to a place where I had to evaluate my needs and what I wanted in life and everything like that. And being intentional with my life and my time and my days and creating the life that I wish existed for myself. And not only that, but on the physical side, because of him, we purchased a home. And if we hadn't purchased a home at the time, we had, that was just right before the prices of homes skyrocketed in and around Vancouver. And if we hadn't purchased at that time, we would have probably not been able to. And now we're at a place where we have an opportunity to do so much with that investment and that money that we were blessed with because of Elijah. And I remember at the time that we wanted to sell that place, I remember my husband said, "Do you want to sell?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. This is the house that we bought for Elijah." And I said, "I'm not selling a house we bought for Elijah. Are you crazy? This is our memory of him." And then he said, "He's with you at all times. So he's not in this house. He's not only in this house, he's with you. Anytime you need him, he's with you." And I said, "Yeah, you're right." And I really had to think about it and think about the fact that our memories are not in material things. Our memories are in us, in our souls, and in our minds, and in our hearts. And that carries with us wherever. So I said, "Okay, sure, that's fine. I will sell it, and it's okay." And it was a very emotional process for me to do that, but it was fine. And then when we decided to conceive for another child, I prayed a lot around that time. I prayed a lot that God protects me and that allows me to carry a healthy pregnancy, and that anything I needed to do in life, I will do to make sure that I have a child that's safe and healthy. And when I got pregnant with my daughter, it was for the most part a pretty good and healthy pregnancy. But I couldn't share that with many people. I didn't want to talk about it very much, my pregnancy, actually at my work. our executive director, when I was almost 30 weeks, he asked me when I was due, and I hadn't told anybody. And one of my managers said, "How come you haven't told us?" And I just said, "Oh, I don't know." And in my head, I was like, "No, I know, because I didn't want to tell everybody at work in case this didn't work out for me. I didn't want to, because I didn't want to have that same feeling of guilt and shame again." And with our family and our friends, we didn't tell anybody until I was more than halfway through my pregnancy. That was something that I had said. I said, I want to get past the point where we lost Elijah before I want to tell anybody. And that's what we did. And even towards the end, I just was not sure. I just didn't know. I could get to 40 weeks and it may not work out, but I just didn't want to get too excited about it. So when I had my daughter, it was an emergency C-section. There was something that went a bit wrong. And then I said, oh my gosh, this may not work out. I don't know. But I just prayed and prayed and prayed, and I closed my eyes and prayed. And then I saw my daughter, and I saw that she was well, and then she was fine. And then I sat there in bed, and I remember after we got home, after, the hustle and bustle of having a child in the hospital and everything like that, we got home one night, and I was breastfeeding her, and I just looked at her, and I just cried. I cried all night because I just said to myself, I never got to breastfeed Elijah. I never got to hold him like this in his own room, in his own nursery. We never got to bring him home from the hospital. We never got to see his facial expressions, hear him yawn, have him cry, change his diaper. We never got to do any of that. We were robbed of all of that. And as my daughter kept growing, I noticed myself constantly saying, oh, look at her sleeping. I never got to see Elijah sleep. Oh, look at her crawling. I never got to see Elijah crawling. Oh, look at her doing this. I never got to see Elijah doing that. And then I got to a point where I realized to myself that she is her own person, and I don't ever want her to feel that she's living in the shadow of her brother, her big brother. But I made a conscious effort at that moment to myself to no longer compare her to her brother, to no longer feel the guilt and the shame of not experiencing those moments with her brother, that I was going to put 100% of my effort into her, and I'm going to let her know about her brother. I'm going to keep his memory alive, but I'm not going to make her be the one that lives in the shadow of him, because that's not fair to her. And I want to dedicate my life to her, just as her. And I wanted to stop that line of thinking for myself, because it wasn't getting me anywhere, but getting deeper into how much I really felt robbed out of my experience of having my son. And even when we were actually finding out the gender, I kept saying to my husband, I want a boy, I want a boy, I want a boy. And he's like, well, I don't care what I want. And I said, well, I really want a boy. I don't really want a girl. I want a boy. And when I found out I was having a girl, I was a little bit upset. And I had to sit and really think to myself, what am I so upset about? I would love to have a daughter. I always wanted a daughter and a son. So why does it matter? And I said, because for some reason my mind had told me that I needed a son, because I needed to replace what Elijah was supposed to be. And I realized I can't replace him. He's his own person. If I have a son, he will also be his own person. He's not going to be the replacement to Elijah. Emilia is not going to be the replacement to Elijah. And any other siblings that she has are not replacements to Elijah. And even though he's not here on earth with us, his spirit has changed me forever and has given us so much to be grateful and thankful for. And every minute of every day, I think about him. And when I need him the most, I know he's always there to support and to guide and to help us. And I know he really helped Amelia and helped me in my pregnancy. And it's just, to me, it's just special that I have two children, in this world. One's in heaven and one's here with us. And then Amelia and all her siblings will always have someone looking over them. And with Elijah, that moment changed. His loss changed me forever. I don't care about the trivial things anymore. I don't care about the small things anymore. I don't care about the the gossip or the little things in life that kind of irk at you or get you, or whether somebody said this or said that. It doesn't matter to me anymore. To me, it just matters if I'm happy on my inside, and am I living my true life? Am I living intentionally with my life? And that's something for my husband as well. And in the last year, we've talked more and more about him than we did when he first passed. And we said that was a very difficult time for us in our relationship. But if we can overcome that, then we can overcome anything in life. And we will continue to have his dream be true. And once we will take Amelia to his place of rest, and we will tell her, this is your brother. And anytime you feel anything in life and you need to go somewhere just to talk out loud and just to relax and to get things off your chest, you can come to see your brother, and you can talk to him, and he'll help show you and guide you in your life and in what you should be doing, and any decisions that you need to make. He will be there for you. And I share this story with you because I just want to explain to you that with this podcast and with this platform that I want to create, I want to inspire all of you to look at the story behind the person. What is the story behind the person? And that's what I hope to share with my guests, is that when you see somebody on Instagram or when you see somebody in person, they may look at this on the surface level as happy, as excited, as accomplished, as the fact that they've got it all together. But when you get to know the person, you'll realize that they're every single one of us, every person in the world. We go through trials, we go through tribulations, we go through challenges, we go to heartache, we go through anguish and agony. But we have to figure out how to be resilient. We have to figure out how to move forward. We have to figure out how to address the challenges that we face, not sweep them under the rug, but address it. And how do we actually heal from it and be able to move forward? And I feel with my son, I finally got to a place now where I feel healed. He's with me all the time, but I don't feel the need to think about him every day. Whereas before, I would feel so guilty if I went a day without thinking about him. I know he's here. I know he's with me. And if I don't think about him that day, that's okay, because I know in my heart he's still there and he's still with me. And I feel it's just easier for me to talk about him now, whereas before I wouldn't be able to talk about it. And I think there's a lot of healing that has happened, but with my daughter here now and spending all my energy in her and trying to build this community and this platform and create flexibility in my life so that I can be that mom that's with her kids all the time, that shows up at all their soccer practices, that shows up at all parent-teacher meetings and field trips and everything. I want to be that mom. And being that mom means I have to create the flexibility for myself in my life, which is why I decided to create this platform, because I want to share this with you. I want to help coach you. I want to help guide you in your life to getting to know what your purpose in life is and how to move forward and how to heal and how to work through your traumas and your experiences and your challenges to a place where you can heal and you can move forward and you can just be happy. That's all we really ever want in life, right? We just all want to be happy. We want our desires and we want our dreams. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing we all want is just happiness. We just want to be happy. So the loss of Elijah for me represents a moment in time when I got to the lowest of lows in my life, but it catapulted me to being better and to getting better and being intentional with my life, being intentional with my days, being intentional with my energy and what I want in life. And the birth of Amelia just cemented that for me, that this is what I want to do in life. I want to be present because I lost my son, and it's a blessing that I have my daughter here healthy and happy. And I want to be there for every moment of her life. I want to be there to spend as much time as I can with her. So I'm going to create that life for myself. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to put that out in the universe that I am going to be that mom that will be there for everything, because that's what I want in life. I want to be there for my children. I want to be there for my family and for my friends. Okay, so thank you for letting me share such a personal story with you. It honestly was the most nerve-wracking thing I've been thinking about for weeks and weeks, and I didn't even know if I was going to do it, but I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that you are watching this and you've, listened to my story. And I hope you take a minute to think about your own life. If you do have your option A and your option A is available still for you, kick the shit out of that too. Don't wait for your option A to not exist to kick the shit out of option B. What are you doing today to be intentional? What are you doing today to live the life that you want to live, that you wish existed for you? You can do it. You can create that life. You just have to commit to yourself. You live a little bit hard over a couple of years where you feel you have less time. Could feel overwhelming. It could feel like you're working all the time, or you're moving forward all the time, or you're doing two things at once. But do that. Make that work, because then in a couple of years you will create that life that you wish existed for yourself. And you will be intentional, and you will be happier and better for it. And if option A doesn't exist for you anymore, kick the shit out of option B. Work through what option A was. Work through why that doesn't exist for you anymore. Heal from it. Get help, get therapy, get coaching. Do what you need to do to work through that, and be gentle on yourself as well. And then kick the shit out of option B. Make sure it's the best life that you have ever lived. Make sure that it's intentional. Make sure that you do what you need to do, and that you do it every day, and you commit to yourself, and you create that life for yourself, because you deserve it. You deserve to live the best life that you want and that you deserve, even if option A is no longer an option. And the one thing that I will say is that when I lost Elijah and I started sharing that with people, I was amazed at the number of people that have lost a child, that have lost their parents, siblings, other family, other friends, who didn't have a moment to realize that they were still grieving, even if it had been years and years, and they needed to grieve, and they needed to go through that in order to move forward. And I think that that's so important, that you acknowledge family members in your life, that you acknowledge people that are in your life that are important to you, that are no longer here physically, but they are here spiritually. So what does that mean for you? And what can you do today to acknowledge that, and to heal from that, and to honor that? So I'll leave that with you, and I would love to hear any stories that you have, or if you want to share, you can send me an email, or you can send me a message on Instagram, and I would love to hear more about your experiences, your stories, and to help guide and coach you through that. So with that, thank you so much for listening to the end of this episode. I would love if you could share our podcast on Instagram and join our Facebook group, as well as like us on the rest of our social media accounts. Follow and subscribe us on YouTube rather, and like us also on our podcast platforms. And if you could, please send me an email with any questions that you have, or any stories that you have. I'd love to share them and hear them, and to connect with you. And remember that you have the option in your life to catalyze your life from ordinary to extraordinary, and it all starts with you. And sometimes you have to go backwards in order to move forward, and know how to move forward too. But you have to heal from your traumas, your experiences, and move forward. Okay? So we'll see you next week, and I hope you're doing well with the challenge, and I'll connect with you on IG Live soon. Okay, bye.